Exploring the Wisdom of the Dark Goddess, a mythic introduction to powerful shadow work for releasing shame and self-judgment. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network. And what people might not know about me is that I really had a thing for Kali in my 20s. And I really recognized the power of working with these dark goddess archetypes to embrace the process of change, sometimes difficult change, looking into the shadows as part of our journey of awakening and healing. This is obviously up in the collective right now. There's a lot of forces that feel very destructive and very destabilizing to people. And so today's call is really a chance to go deeper into understanding the dark goddess, the transformative processes of working with shadow in a way that's both personally relevant and collectively as well. So we're going to get to do so with a really remarkable teacher. Her name is Melissa Kim Corter. She's a depth psychologist and author and has taught for Shift before to rave reviews. So she's back and excited to share. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm honored to be here. Excited to be back again.
Great. And you have the perfect backdrop for today's call. I do want to note that. And if people are excited by today, we're going to have a brand new chance to go deeper with Melissa in a course called The Journey of the Dark Goddess that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So more to come. So Melissa, there's a lot you could share, obviously, about your backstory, but I think particularly what drew you to working with the Dark Goddess, scholarly, archetypally, and spiritually.
Great question. It's one of those kind of experiences where you look back and you kind of see evidence of them all along the way. But there really was a pivotal moment a few years ago. I had already been knee deep in my coursework for my PhD, had been studying archetypes and Jungian psychology, shadow work. And I thought I was deeply attuned to that realm of things. And then I got sick. I came down with an illness that confined me to my bed for quite some time. And through that process, when I was deep in the throes of the symptoms, the pain, the struggles, the challenges that come with, any type of an illness, I noticed that there was something else kind of stirring beneath all of those very human sort of qualities and experiences. And I kind of was forced in a way to surrender as my body was doing what it wanted to. I didn't really have control over the process or what was happening, but what I could do was surrender. And what I noticed is as I surrendered, there was something beneath the surface that was sort of holding me emotionally, psychologically. And that entire process began to unfold very rapidly. So the more that I surrendered, the more that I would see, sense, and feel these different images, impressions, symbols. And it was a little bit overwhelming and confusing at first because I thought, this is it. I'm dying. Something's going on here. Um, at the same time, I had a critical assignment due, which is kind of like the last thing I was capable of. I could barely lift my head off the pillow, let alone finish this coursework. And something happened. I still can't explain it to this day. I picked up my computer. I have no memory of doing this. I typed out all of the pages perfectly. Everything that needed to happen moved through me onto the page. And when I later on, thankfully healed, recovered, looked back at that time, I barely recognized myself in the writing. And it was just one piece of many moments of going, what is this? What am I in touch with? What's going on here? But that process was incredible. It helped me to understand that these archetypal essences, these energies that we work with, that sometimes they step in on our behalf. Sometimes they will move through us somatically through the body, just as much as they can intellectually through the mind, and to show us that there's more going on beyond what our frame of reference might be in the moment. So that illness forced me to surrender, which then opened me to be able to experience this other realm of energy. And not only did it help me get through the illness itself, but it left me completely transformed. I came out of that illness, thankfully, as I was in recovery and starting to kind of come home to myself. I realized I couldn't go forward the way that I had been operating. I had to burn down everything in my life, pretty much, my entire business of 20 years, stripped down. Everything you can possibly imagine had to go. I released clients, my membership, my writings, my teachings, videos for nearly 20 years of content. What I didn't let go of was erased from a hard drive at the same time by accident. And it just blows my mind because the one thing that was left on that hard drive was a manuscript I was working on that was all about shadow work, which became a book I eventually wrote. All
Wow.
of that was evidence of the dark goddesses in a very strange, intuitive, and somatic way that later I've learned to track, trace, and study.
Those instances definitely make you pay attention. So
For sure.
yeah,
Trial by fire.
let's set a little bit of the context. I think for people who are not as steeped in Jungian work around shadow work, I think that's really central to understand why this kind of dark goddess archetypal energy sort of works with whatever is in the shadows of us, and that's not a bad thing to have something in the shadow. It's really in many ways just shielded from our self-awareness. So maybe share a little bit about shadow work and the understanding of it in Jungian therapy and orientation, and why this kind of darker archetypal energy may be necessary to work with that.
Sure. So one thing that I think is important, I like to share shadow work from a Jungian perspective, which is the sort of the origins of shadow studies. Carl Jung was the one that actually coined the term the shadow self. And when we look at the shadow, which is this hidden part of us, I actually call it like our psychic cauldron. It's this cauldron part of us that is a vessel. It holds things on our behalf. So there's a lot of understanding that the shadow is this terrible thing. It's out to get us or punish us. But the truth is, it's more like a containing vessel just beneath the surface of awareness. Within that container, we have memories, we have desires, we have unmanifest potential, we have parts of us we haven't met yet, we have qualities and skills and gifts and talents that just haven't yet broken into our conscious awareness. So, shadow work through that lens is very much about embracing the unknown, embracing your potential. Of course, there are moments where you might encounter some shadow material that is a little bit unsettling, or I like to say activating, because it still has a very powerful purpose. But within that, we have this ability to understand that everything in shadow, all of the experiences, all of the energy, the emotion, the things that have been kind of tucked within this vessel within us, it's not here to cause us harm.
Mm.
It's a holding place. It's there so that we can learn how to work in harmony with it. One of my favorite parts about this type of shadow work and this perspective is that we actually learn that the shadow is in service to the soul.
Mm.
It's not oppositional to it, it isn't against us, it isn't something we have to fear. It certainly has its moments of intensity, but even within that, when we take sort of this curious attitude toward the shadow, we discover that it has this amazing power, this enchanted aspect to it that's actually in service to the soul, which means it's helping us in this life experience. It's leading us forward. Everything is unfolding in this way that is for the highest good. And the shadow just happens to be a part of the whole dynamic of who we are, a part of the psyche. But because it's under our conscious awareness, it's misunderstood. We can't see it directly, right? It's not something that we can look at and point at and say, oh, there's shadow. This is what it looks like. But we can feel it. We can sense it. We know when we're activated. I tell people and my students that the way that you know you're dealing with shadow is you look for the emotional charge. And that isn't just in negative situations and circumstances. It's the same thing about being really passionate about what you do. There's usually an emotional charge there. There's some kind of a driving force. That too is part of shadow saying, yes, you're on the right path. And so the way that we work with shadow in these different practices and theories and experiences in Jungian shadow work is very creative. It's all about creativity and understanding what it is that wants to materialize or express itself through us in our own unique life experience. So the shadow is a critical part of that entire equation.
I love the shadow work and is in service to the soul, and that in many ways it holds so many of these other potentials. Now, you said that it has some charge. So, what are some of the symptoms that you're like, some area that you're like, see, you're engaging with the outer world, and then you're like, oh, that's going to tell me that there's something in my shadow that I haven't yet claimed or honored or brought forward.
I love that question. I can use personal example because I'm always working on my shadow. I'm never immune to this type of work, especially those of us that teach it. We really get some master classes in shadow. And one of the things that I notice is a feeling that almost feels disproportionate for the experience. So imagine you're in conversation with someone. And maybe there is a subject that comes up. And in that subject, you're noticing yourself kind of reacting in a way that feels accentuated, a bit enhanced. Not a normal type of disagreement or maybe, not seeing eye to eye, but you actually might feel in your own body like this emotion, this feeling of energy, heat when the nervous system starts to respond. So sometimes it's a physical reaction that'll say, I'm getting kind of worked up here. What is that about? That's really curious that this is happening. Sometimes it'll come through our words. There might be an intensity, that passion again, which can be something that's trying to show us there might be some tension, something unresolved in what's happening. Another cue that is an interesting symptom is sometimes we sort of regress into a different version of ourselves. So you might be having this conversation with someone and they touch on something in the circumstance and the conversation, and all of a sudden you feel yourself kind of like, wow, I feel like my 12-year-old self is showing up in this conversation. What's going on there? The rebellious teenager or even a childlike part that's throwing a bit of a tantrum. Sometimes we have the consciousness to realize it and say, isn't that interesting that this is happening right now? Something is going on. This feels a lot bigger than it seems like for the context. But other times we don't realize it until it's over. We kind of reflect, we look back and say, why was I so charged? What was going on in that situation? Now, it doesn't have to always be conversation with someone, it can be any type of meeting of events in the outer world. You might be in traffic and find yourself just coming undone for no reason. You might, in a positive sense, you might be watching someone speak and really compelled by what they're saying, just absolutely drawn in. And a part of you feels lit up and excited, like something is going on there. There's something in the connection of you listening to the speaker, and a part of you is coming alive. And that too can have a charge. And that might be telling us something about look a little closer. There's something here for you to pay attention to. Sometimes our symptoms are physical. So even through the body, we can have this sense of feeling repelled by information, by a situation, a circumstance. We might want to step back. There might be a part of us saying, I don't really like what's going on here. So we notice we're just kind of distancing ourselves. But there can also be the leaning into wanting more. But usually that charge, it's got something more to it than just your typical interaction. It's heightened in some way. It's almost electric. Some people will describe it like there's just this sense of electricity that kind of moves through them. There can be emotion that comes with that. You might find yourself all of a sudden having some fear, some anxiety, some excitement. It really just depends on the circumstance, but the shadow can materialize through the body, through words, through conversation, and usually the catalyst is some type of meeting of events with people or circumstances. So, us moving in the world and having something external kind of in that same space with us is usually what
Mhm.
activates it.
That was a great, really detailed answer. And I want to ask now about, so a lot of what you've just shared is understandable within a more conventional psychological paradigm, but like then bringing in this notion of archetypal and really even a spiritual force of a dark goddess. Maybe share how does that fit with everything you're just sharing?
Absolutely. So, in a spiritual sense, we might say that, a lot of us believe that there's something greater than us that we're connected to, that's operating within us. And depending on the perspective and our different philosophies and theories of what we believe in, we might gravitate towards certain deities or beings. Some people work with angels, some people work with guides or animal totems. And so the dark goddesses are also archetypes. They tend to be more, when I say archetypal, by the way, it's less stereotypical. The difference is important in this language and this type of conversation because these are energies we will sense and feel, and they express through our words, our language. They express in what we're not saying, where we're stopping ourselves, where we are limited. They show up at the crossroads of our lives. They show up in threshold moments, we might say experiences of tension. So, in a spiritual sense, we might look at that as working with resistance. We might look at it as wanting to develop this self, right? So that we feel more whole, more complete, more grounded, trusting in whatever our faith is, our God of our own understanding. And so we lean on different ideas and principles to sort of help us navigate challenges and dark times, dark night of the soul moments. And these archetypal energies are available for us in the same way. So it's really a matter of learning to see symbolically and to open that part of us, that creative part of us that's really good at working with symbols and images and feelings and sensations. And that's kind of the thing that unites all of these different disciplines. Like a lot of us will resonate with the idea of an image, a symbol, and synchronicities, right? Things that align and come together. And so we can use the dark goddesses in this way of understanding that they are also helping kind of nudge us on the path, like breadcrumbs along the way, trying to help us see that there's more going on beyond what our minds allow us to know.
Hmm.
Just like we would trust in a faith to lead us, right? To follow the nudge or the intuition to take that next step or say yes to something. We can do the same thing as we work with the energies of the dark goddesses to support us regardless of what our faith is. That's what I love about the work too. It's not isolated. It's very unifying and diverse and supportive in that way.
Really great explanation. Now, how does the myth work into this in storytelling? Since I know that's very foundational with Jung to kind of rescript and work with mythology to understand our shadow dynamics in a deeper way.
It's such a great question. This is one of the most fascinating things I find when I heard this and learned about this part of mythology and the shadow and the connection between them. I was kind of blown away. So, when we have those charges, right, those emotional charges that we're talking about, usually they have a core to them that's in the shadow that we can't see. So we call these complexes. It's like this little energetic structure that sits in the shadow. And every complex has a core. Within that core, they believe is a living myth of some kind. So basically, it's saying that the patterns we have, the cycles we have, the things that we're living out match with certain types of myths. So when we look to mythology or fairy tales or different stories, we see ourselves. We see our challenges and our opportunities. But by doing so, we give ourselves what we call this psychological distancing from our own lives. So maybe something's really difficult for you to look at in the present moment, a challenge, an obstacle, something that you're still kind of trying to like find your way through. But all of a sudden, you go watch a movie or you read a great story and you get these ideas and you start kind of seeing that there are so many possibilities, so many other ways that this story could go. So the myths give us these keys to opening the mind, helping us to understand these deeper patterns that are operating within each one of us. And sometimes just by listening to a myth, you let go of what you know to be true. You open the mind, which is part of that symbolic thinking. You start to kind of see things through symbolism, through synchronicity, and all of a sudden you get a solution or a new idea or a new way of seeing something. That's part of the magic of that cauldron experience of knowing that these myths, these archetypes, these energies within us and being in service to the soul in that way are actually trying to help us decode those stories, those
Hmm.
patterns we have. And it's creative. So it bypasses the ego, which usually gets a little, it's funny when we try to do transformational work or we attempt to work on something on ourselves, break a pattern. We have all this willpower and this desire and drive, and then all of a sudden something happens and we're repeating it all over again. But when we learn about the myths and the stories, we start to get to the root of what's under that. And by taking it out of our lives and into a film, into a story, we can open all those solutions and the possibilities to allow new information to come through, which doesn't threaten the ego and actually allows us to connect more deeply to the intuition, to what it is we might be meant to experience on the path that we're walking. We might just open ourselves to meeting new people and having a different experience. So it's also to say that it gets us out of these rigid structures and opens up new territory in working with shadow and creativity in this way.
You really beautifully explained it. I wonder if an example or two of how you could kind of take something that, discover you have a shadow dynamic, and then work with myth in that way and align with the powers of the dark goddess to sort of like transform it, just to kind of help illuminate how you do that work.
Absolutely. So is this a good time for the exercise or because that's
Why don't we
exactly
do,
what.
why don't you give an example first and then we could do the exercise afterwards?
Perfect, perfect. So an example, I have a wonderful example. So there was a client, I can share a story. She's given me permission. A client that was having this repetitive pattern that was happening in her life. And she was really struggling to understand why she couldn't let money in. She was just everything that she did, she was struggling with prosperity, we might say, or abundance. And one of the things that we found out as she was describing her business, she kept repeating the words, I feel like I'm pushing a boulder up a mountain. And I thought that's a really powerful image. That's something really interesting to think about is like pushing this boulder up a mountain. It's exhausting, it's tiring, it's heavy. And it's really interesting because there is a myth where the main protagonist in the myth was doomed to this an eternity of always having to push this boulder up the top of the mountain. And every time he would get to the top of the mountain, it would roll back down and he'd have to start again. And I thought that was just so fascinating that she was playing this out. She didn't know the story. She had never heard of the myth before. And so what we did is we worked together to create a new image. So every time she kind of felt that way, she would go internally inside of her mind and she imagined herself sitting in this room with all of this abundance around her, with all of the clients sitting around her that she wanted to work with. And she saw golden coins everywhere and a key. And she would hold the key, and this was the visualization she would just have in her mind's eye. It sounds interesting because it's like, well, what does that change? How does that change us on any level if we're just kind of imagining? But you have to understand that myth, the pushing the boulder up the mountain, was something that she had been saying for so long. Her entire business, her strategy, her way of working was operating from that perspective. So when she shifted and she just spent a little time every day going internal, sitting, going quiet, holding the key in her hands, seeing herself in that sacred space, surrounded with the gold coins, the clients, laughing, having fun, she started to actually get new ideas. The new ideas that came to her led her to more aligned ways of operating within her business. Not only did she shift the financial part, the abundance and the prosperity, she opened up to ideas that she might not have considered because there was a part of her that was operating out of pain. It had to be hard. It had to be difficult, right? That's
Mhm.
what it's like to push that boulder up a mountain. But the new image of sitting in this space with the key, it became easy. It became effortless. It became magical and enchanted. And so she found this new love for her business while also opening up to more prosperity and abundance.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot in that in terms of really understanding the dynamics of how these shadow patterns get freeze parts of your potential and keep them from growing and contributing in different ways, as well as the power of certain symbols to really shift things too. So that's really great. And in a moment, I know you're going to take us on an experiential application of this, but I realize that I do want to kind of ask you about our collective right now, not about specifics, but my perception is that we are getting some very unique opportunities to work with shadow dynamics on a collective level. And how are you seeing that play out in terms of like a lot that's moving, that's stirring shadow dynamics in the culture, and then how that we can take that as grist for our own transformation as part of the process?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that I'm seeing, sensing, feeling, experiencing, and hearing with clients and then in my own life around this is that there is a lot of shadow material to work with these days. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things coming to surface, that are being exposed and moving into our awareness. And as terrible as it sometimes feels, as difficult and challenging as it is to see and begin to learn and hear about these things, especially when they're things that are external, right? It feels so much out of our control. But that's part of the illusion, because I think we all have a role in being able to assimilate shadow material. And we're doing it when we do this kind of work, when we look within ourselves, when we decide to look a little bit closer to the things that make us uncomfortable. We rob it of its power. And that's something I think a lot of people are learning. Where is our power? What does power even mean to us? The other part of shadow work is discernment. We're learning discernment. We're learning how to observe, how to decompress, how to ground ourselves when things are moving rapidly and a little bit chaotically. One of my favorite other kind of ways to sort of soften and bring a little bit of some light into all of the shadow is to also very briefly explain the myth of Pandora. So those of you probably have heard of Pandora's box. It's actually Pandora's jar. That's the original myth. And so it's this idea that she takes the lid off and all the horrors of the world are floating around, right? You've got chaos and you've got strife and you've got all of these different things. But it's important to remember that at the very bottom of that jar, the thing that's left is hope. And I think that's essential. So we can work with these ideas very practically every day in our everyday lives, as big as the events seem, as intense and chaotic as the world can feel, to remember that this is a process of things unfolding, coming to consciousness, and we all can do things to contribute to that. And we're doing it by this kind of work is exactly what we do. We have conversations with one another. We learn to be compassionate. We learn how to work on the things that make us uncomfortable. But we're also learning how to be with tension. We're learning how to stay present and observe things that normally we might have turned away from. And I think that's part of the wisdom of this time is we're not meant to turn away.
Mm.
Doesn't mean we have to throw ourselves into it all in overwhelming ways or ways that are not helpful for us. But there is wisdom in learning to observe and to cultivate your intuition. And intuition is really forged in these moments of tension and observation. And so I think that is something that's helpful to consider is that there is a process. So even in shadow, we still believe there's a hidden intelligence at work. So if we can kind of bring that attitude into this really interesting, messy world and say there's still a hidden intelligence at work there. And that is my hope. That's what's in the bottom of my jar when I think of Pandora and the box, that regardless of what it looks like, there's always something else going on. And I do believe it involves the soul as
Mm.
well.
Beautiful reflections. Well, I think now would be a great time to dive in with the practice you wanted to guide us in to really start to work with the dark goddess in a deeper way and do some shadow work and contribute to our healing and service.
Excellent. So, what we're going to do is we're going to use a little myth here to kind of play around with. So, this is a really potent myth. It's called the Hydra myth. You may or may not have heard of it. Essentially, it's about this creature. So, the Hydra is this creature, it's like a serpent kind of a creature that has many heads, and it comes up out of the swamp. And the idea is that every time we attempt to cut off one of the heads to try to slay this beast, right? It reproduces. It produces two more heads in the place where one was cut. Now, that sounds pretty grim and a little gruesome, but I promise you, there's a deeper meaning. And how often do we have some type of pattern, an affliction, or something that we're really struggling to get to the root of? You know, there might be something that's been repeating in your life, something that you've attempted to work on. You might have tried a lot of different modalities. You may have worked on this problem and just kind of came at it from all these different angles. But maybe it seems like it just gets worse or it doesn't go away or it comes back. So the Hydra myth is sort of this perfect representation for those really stubborn and frustrating repetitive patterns. So imagine this creature, if you will. So I'm going to invite you to kind of walk with me through this. So if you feel if it's appropriate for you to allow your eyes to close, you're more than welcome to move through this with your eyes closed to help you kind of tap into that inner vision a little bit more. So just bring this idea of this creature to mind, the Hydra, however it looks to you. We all have some version of this many-headed creature in our lives. Again, it might be a pattern, a symptom, a concern, something that just kind of keeps creeping back around, regardless of how much effort you put into trying to slay this pattern. So just eyes closed, taking a couple deep breaths. Imagine yourself just standing at the edge of this dark, misty marsh. There's this dark water beneath, and this is where the Hydra lives. Now, from this water, you see this many-headed serpent just rise up, and it's a little intimidating. It's writhing about, moving quickly, a little chaotically, and just take a couple deep breaths and observe and remember it just represents all these different parts of the pattern. Every head is something different, maybe an emotion, maybe a different manifestation of how this pattern shows up in your life. Just breathe and observe. And start to notice all of the different heads. One might represent anger or fear or shame, self-doubt, maybe something radically different. Whatever it is perfect for you. Just notice all these different heads and do your best to just observe. We're not trying to fix them or fight them. Just notice. Now, the key here is to remember that in the myth, the battle makes it worse. So we're going to go in the opposite direction. So just in your mind's eye, you're seeing this creature or imagining this as your pattern, your symptom. I want you to imagine that your breath is actually part of the magic and the antidote. So just breathe and slow your breathing. Let your breath kind of actually just soften your whole body as you observe this creature in your mind's eye. And now ask yourself inwardly, what's really beneath all of these crazy, strange, weird heads of this creature? What's under there? And just give yourself permission. Let your awareness travel down past these writhing heads into that dark water, into the murky depths below. Because at the base of that creature, there's something else going on there. Something that's being protected, something sacred. Just breathe and sink in a little deeper, just imagining this a little further. Notice what this creature might be protecting. Now, it might look like a symbol, it might be a knot of energy, you might have a memory, an emotion, something else, some unmet longing, feeling, whatever arises, just trust your intuition. Know that whatever you're sensing is more than enough, and we're just gently approaching this. Now, rather than trying to figure it out, Just say silently to this creature and whatever it is that's guarding below, just say, I see you now and I'm listening. You don't have to keep rising up to be known. I'm here and I'm present. And take a breath and just observe. Ask, what does this need, this thing that's being guarded or protected, what does it need? Does it need to be expressed? Does it need compassion? Does it need to rest? Just let your awareness be enough. And just observe and breathe. Now, imagine that your awareness is the nourishment needed in this situation. So direct your attention again toward that part, whatever that is that's being guarded beneath that creature. And just know that you are grounded. Intentional energy is this warm, gentle salve. And whatever's there is going to start to respond just to your presence alone. You're not fixing, you're not figuring it out. You might even see, sense, or feel that the Hydra's many heads are beginning to settle down, to become more calm, more quiet. No destruction needed. You don't have to destroy anything. Instead, just allow this deep integration to unfold. The energy that's used to fight, to fix, to figure out can be channeled differently now. Just rest. Take a few breaths here. Just observe what it's like. That this part doesn't have to shout to be heard, doesn't have to repeat itself to be seen. And then when you're ready, just very gently step back from the marsh, feel into your body again. Take this wisdom with you. Whatever you learned, whatever you saw, it has a deeper purpose. Just come back to the room around you. And then when you're ready, slowly opening your eyes, carrying this wisdom with you. And just trust that whatever you experienced in that moment, you may have insight right now, but you might also discover it in a dream tonight, in a synchronistic experience tomorrow. So spend some time journaling because the psyche has a really beautiful creative way of showing you all the things that you need, and your presence is more than enough. So
Hmm,
just take note of that.
nice. Well, thank you for that. So when you journal and you write it down, you're just planting, you're kind of almost turning on the radar to pay attention for what the next symbol is that wants to build on that.
Yes. So it's important to just close this out to say the thing that ended up slaying the Hydra wasn't cutting off all the heads. It was getting to the root, which was discovering that there was one part of this creature that was immortal. And it was through this soft approach, through this presence that
Mm,
helps us use our intuition to kind of lean right into what that might be instead of all the action and the forcefulness and the trying and the frustration, the stress of trying to figure out the pattern. Sometimes when we just kind of soften,
mm,
the answer comes or the next step might arrive. It might be the next detail you need to take action or to explore that experience a little bit further.
mm. It also speaks to how we might have a tendency to want to polarize against the shadow at the surface, and that doesn't actually solve anything too.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's another thing that yeah, it's worth just reflecting on is just how often we're sort of battling things in the world that are actually things that are in our shadow that might have a gift for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing. I feel like with shadow, sometimes we get the gift immediately. We have this amazing experience, something transforms within us. We get that instant wisdom and we're just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that even was hiding in this thing that I feared." but sometimes it takes a little time. It might take some time to really explore and to discover there's more layers that are connected to whatever this experience is.
Hmm.
That's why I love journaling for these kind
Yeah.
of practices
Can,
too.
can you give an example of a symbol that sort of puzzled you at first and then kind of unfolded over time and then led to something
Yes.
radically new?
Absolutely. In fact, it's why I'm doing this work right now. Years ago, a couple of years ago, I had a dream about an octopus. And at first I was like, what? It was a brief dream. So there were four doors and I went to go knock on each one of these doors. And every door that opened, the same thing happened. There was a doctor with a stethoscope and a clipboard and a patient. And me knocking on the door was saying, I'm going to go in there. Now, in my waking life, what was happening is I thought I was going to work with patients one on one. And so all of these doctors slammed the door in my face and basically said, no, you're not meant to come in here. I was in the dream, I was frustrated. I didn't know what to do. So I turn around and there's a glass wall with this giant octopus. And it was situated in the depths. And it was so beautiful and so at peace. And after analyzing that dream and working with that symbol for close to 2 years, I finally realized that's this work. I was going down a different path with my work and it wasn't fulfilling, it wasn't exciting. And now I love being situated in the depths, sitting with people, having these types of conversations and showing them we don't have to fear these dark, deep places. Just like the octopus in the ocean, we can find our way of being with it where it's actually peaceful and transformative and has some value for us.
I love that. I love that. Well, are there other practices you want to sort of recommend for ways to engage with this symbolic process working with the dark goddess that you feel like are really important for us to get here today?
Absolutely. So there's so many different ways to work with the dark goddesses. We can engage with them through something called active imagination. It's a little bit sort of like what we did with the Hydra myth, where we go internal and we do some type of a visualization activity, but yet you're working with that symbol. Instead of just closing your eyes and kind of receiving like in a meditation, you might be asking a question. You might be saying, what do you have to tell me? How can I experience you more? Especially with the dark goddesses, because it can be very somatic. It can be something meaning that we feel through the body. So, even something when we go to, let's say, talk about something difficult, and all of a sudden you feel that restriction in your throat. You want to shut down. Maybe you're afraid to say whatever it is you're going to say. You can actually call on them and work with these essences in those moments of tension. We call it being in the crossroads of things, at the thresholds of things. It's where a change is about to happen, where something is no longer what it was. It's not yet become what it's becoming. So there's a middle ground, a liminal space. That's where we can meet these dark goddesses. So you can do that through body and breath. You can do that through imagination. You can do that through journaling practices. You can do it in all different ways through yoga, through meditation, but really trusting yourself in the process to say, I don't have to have this massive understanding of who or what they are to begin to engage, to start to have relationship with them in this spiritual kind of way, to start learning about what it is they're here to reveal, to help guide you through. Sometimes you'll go through something and years later you look back and go, oh my gosh, I feel like that was Medusa. I feel like she was teaching me how to heal through a betrayal or something else. So it's also a practice of doing your best to soften the mind when it says, I can't do this, or I'm not a mythologist, or I don't even know where to begin. Curiosity is the key. That's the invitation. The second that we get curious, we open up, and these essences are already there. In fact, something I like to share with my clients is to say, when you start to kind of investigate them, explore them, and research the dark goddesses, you'll discover That was probably their prompting before you even had the logical decision to go forward to learn about them. They're usually materializing already in your life in a certain way. And it's kind of this really magical, beautiful, synchronistic process to discover them. So just
Mm,
staying open, really.
that's great. Well, Melissa, you're just a joy to learn from. So let's talk about your upcoming course, which is your Octopus in Action. So
That's
we're very excited to have Melissa teaching this program. I really think it's very well timed, and a deeper understanding of these forces and shadow work is really critical to navigate our times with grace and with transformation. And so this is really perfect to be able to do this course right now. So Melissa's going to be teaching the course. It's called The Journey of the Dark Goddess, a mystical descent into Jungian shadow work to transmute self-doubt and reclaim feminine power. You can find it at the URL darkgoddesscourse.com, darkgoddesscourse.com. It's a 7-week program. There are no prerequisites. It's just if you're intuitively drawn and you can feel the value of this work for you. So, Melissa, I'd love for you to share in your own words what some of your intentions are for what people will come away with, and then we'll go through the modules and give a preview of what's coming.
Sure. So one of the things I'm just so excited to experience with you and to lead you through if you join us is this experience of understanding how deeply supported you are and how creative that process can be, and that you have access to this whole realm of the dark goddesses for every possible thing you could ever think of, every problem, every challenge, and you don't have to do it alone. And once you learn just a very few different type of techniques and perspectives to sort of embrace, it'll transform your entire relationship with this type of work. And you can do this on your own. So that's the beautiful thing about where we're going in this program is it's things that you can apply to daily life, daily situations and circumstances. And it's deeply rich and creative. So it's inspiring. And I feel like that's the type of medicine we all really could use these days is to work on ourselves while also feeling this enchantment of the psyche and the shadow through the presence of the dark goddesses. And it's a joy and such a beautiful ritual experience. And I just can't even wait to share it with you.
Module 1 is called Bring Compassionate Awareness to Painful Experiences Through Persephone's Journey to the Underworld.
Yes. So during module one, we go through this descent and we'll explain what the descent is, where you learn how to turn toward those challenges, painful experiences, and we start to really invoke compassion and learn how to have compassion and understanding and to confront things where we might have had resistance. And we'll learn how to transform any residual energy, suffering, emotions, things that kind of get in the way from wanting to open to this experience. Another way to say it is instead of bypassing our feelings, we'll discover how our presence can actually be a bridge and create this alchemical experience by working with shadow right from the start in the very first module.
Module 2, Let Go of the Need to Know with Hecate to navigate life transitions with greater self-authority and discernment.
This is one of my favorite modules because it's all about navigating uncertainty, but learning how to cultivate inner vision. I call it learning how to see in the dark. This is something that Hecate teaches us. And so you will develop discernment, being able to see with your intuitive sight rather than from a logical decision-making process. You'll sink down deeper and cultivate that intuition.
Module 3, Stop Negotiating Your Self-Worth and Awaken Psychic Power through the wisdom of Lilith.
This is where we stop apologizing for who we are and claim our own personal authority, which is really challenging for a lot of us to do. So you'll uncover what it is that you might have been bargaining with for your worth, for belonging, for safety, and feel supported as we begin to awaken that inner power, reclaim our boundaries, our desires, and to unapologetically go for what we want in this life.
Module 4, Attune to what nourishes and harms you with Baba Yaga to step into deeper truth, self-responsibility, and wisdom.
I love the Baba Yaga. In this module, we learn about this devouring witch, which really actually helps us to sharpen our discernment, teaching us boundaries, which is necessary. You'll start to sense what it is that actually nourishes you and what surprisingly might be draining your energy, deepening your capacity for truth, for personal responsibility, but also embodied wisdom in your everyday choices.
Module 5, retrieve your true voice with Medusa to transform betrayal into self-respect, agency, and openness.
This is a big one. Reclaiming the voice, being able to understand what does that mean? How does that feel? Without closing the heart, I will say, keeping the heart open as we create strength that's rooted in this openness versus armoring. And Medusa arrives in ways that teach us all about where we're freezing, where we're turning to stone. And so we'll explore those themes as well.
Module 6, understand how destruction clears a path for renewal, new life force, and liberation through Kali.
Yes, Kali comes for everything that no longer serves us. And you'll understand how these are necessary endings to things, right? Clearing space for liberation, vitality, opening the door so that we can experience something called a rebirth, a psychological rebirth. So we start to learn that we don't have to fear those moments of collapse. Instead, we can understand that destruction also has an upside to it. It has a creative part of it. That destruction, too, is a sacred force that helps us to renew different functions within the psyche and the shadow.
And finally, Module 7, hold your complexity without fragmentation and embody wholeness and coherence through the myth of Nyx.
Hmm. Nix. We learn to listen with soul. We start to make choices from alignment instead of fear. And so Nix is like this primordial darkness, like the rich, fertile soil that helps us to really grow what it is we want to create in this world. But we learn also how to hold complexity, just like we're navigating the events in the world right now, without losing coherence or losing parts of ourselves. So this final module really will help us to integrate the shadow and the light through what we call embodied wholeness, which allows us to live from depth rather than fragmentation.
Mm. Well, what an awesome program. I mean, it's clearly going to be so exciting from a kind of deeper understanding of mythology, psychology, spirituality, and also really practical and applicable to our current moment. And shadow work is always a perennial important thing on the path. So again, it's all at darkgoddesscourse.com. I'll share a little bit more about it. So not only do you get the 7 90-minute live modules with Melissa, which is also going to give you time to ask your questions live and do interactive practices together. You also get recordings of every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There are weekly exercises for home. There's a community group to support you and deepen your experience, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, you'll also see there are a number of extra bonuses. One is called The Storied Self, Uncovering the Soul Through Transformational Journaling, sort of going deeper into what we talked about earlier. It's actually a 3-hour audio experience. Melissa, you want to share more about that, almost like mini course?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite offerings because it really allows us to, in real time, go through a journaling practice. A lot of different exercises or programs have journaling included, and you're kind of expected to sort of, wait till you get through the material and then spend that time on your own. But honestly, a lot of us just don't do that. We get busy, we forget, we don't make the time. So, this program is specifically designed to walk with you while you journal. So, there's actual journaling time and space built in where I'm right there with you in the background, encouraging you to go a little deeper so that actually you do take the time because these integration processes are part of that transformation that we really crave, yet we don't always have the time or space to embody it.
So that's a great bonus. And then there's a second bonus called My Beautiful Darkness, a guided practice. It's an audio, video, and PDF. You want to share more about that?
Sure. So I love this practice. It's helping to shift how we think and feel about darkness. So you can take a pattern, a problem, a situation, and you learn how to see it differently. And there's very specific guided practices. So depth psychological tools that are used in this practice. One of them is a tapping track where you actually do emotional freedom technique tapping to embrace the hidden parts of you And I've gotten feedback from some of my clients that it is a very moving experience, and you can revisit it over and over again with different intentions anytime you feel the need.
What a great extra bonus as well. And then there's one final bonus, which is your special bonus if you move forward today. This is called the Prosperity Power Retrieval Exercise. It's an audio, video, and PDF shadow work experience by Melissa. And I want to share more about the Prosperity Power Retrieval exercises, which they get today.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorites as well. We're just in such a powerful time right now to reclaim what it means to have money, to work with money, abundance, prosperity, to release shame of wanting more and holding more, because the more that we allow in, the more that we can reinvest in the world, in people, in good things. And so I love this process because it helps to kind of sink beneath some of the layers of what we think about money, what we think, what our patterns might be, and you surprisingly discover there might be some other things going on within you that are getting in the way of really achieving having a healthy relationship with money. So you're calling your power back from these different experiences where the ego might be stopping and blocking you from letting it in. And it's another creative and gentle practice that's just happens to be really potent at the same time.
That's a great extra reason to sign up right away. So that's called the Prosperity Power Retrieval Exercise, and that's your special bonus if you sign up by midnight. So clearly, this is going to be such a rich, deep program. And we've kept the investment very accessible. It's just three payments of $128, or you can save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start on March 31st and run Tuesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts in the community as well. There's clearly amazing testimonials on the page, including from other Shift faculty members and really happy students as well. So you're in really good hands, and you're going to have a deep dive into your depths and to really open up the shadow material for transformation, liberation, and service in your larger mission in life. So again, it's all at darkgoddesscourse.com, darkgoddesscourse.com, and you get that special bonus by midnight tonight, which is the Prosperity Power Retrieval Exercise. So, Melissa, it's been great to be with you. Really perfect timing in terms of just helping to offer an illuminating light into the shadow at a time of a lot of tumult. So, thank you. And
Absolutely.
anything else you want to share that's on your heart about this upcoming course and people are considering joining you?
Sure. Oh, there's so much on my heart these days with everything going on. I think that's really more of the reason why it's so important that we do come together and we gather in these type of supportive spaces. And I would just be so honored to have you join me in the process. I know that sometimes it can be uncomfortable, sometimes even terrifying to think about turning toward these parts of ourselves, especially if we've spent years trying to fix something or hide something. And it's heavy to carry that. And what I've discovered in doing this work is those things that feel heavy, that are so frightening and scary, are often misunderstood. And when we feel safe to explore them, we usually discover there's something radically different going on beneath the surface. And I know from lived experience that darkness and shadow are not here to cause us harm. They're actually these potent incubators of depth that are here to initiate us. So, this work isn't just learning about lists of qualities and different things, but how to trace these essences somatically, intuitively, psychologically through the body, through our breath, through our beliefs. And if you feel that pull, that curiosity, take this step because that's often the psyche, the dark goddesses inviting you to take the next step. And I'd be honored for you to join us in this somatic, mythic, ritual experience with me and, of course, the dark goddesses.
What an awesome invitation. Thank you, Melissa, for your wisdom, for this hour, and for really creating this course. It's such an opportune moment. So I know people are going to be blessed if they choose to move forward. So again, it's all at darkgoddesscourse.com, darkgoddesscourse.com. And if you sign up by midnight tonight, you are going to get the special bonus, which is the prosperity power retrieval exercise, audio, video, and PDF shadow work experience. So thank you so much. Many blessings.
Thank you.